On today's episode, we have Natalie from Texas. How you doing, Natalie?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing well. So, what can I help you with today?
So, I guess my main kind of dilemma is friendship before dating. I know that a lot of Christian YouTubers, and I know, like you have mentioned before, that you think that it's a good idea to be friends before dating. And I know there's other Christian, creators and things like that kind of are against that. So there's been a lot of mixed messages with that. So I'm kind of just unsure about my stance.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Makes sense. Mixed messages out there.
Yeah. And so the reason that I have some confusion is because of my past experiences with friendship and with men.
Okay.
I'll say this: all of my relationships have come from friendships. So I mean that's not a total bad thing, but even like as a young girl, I've had lots of guy friends that at the time I thought were interested in friendship.
Okay.
And that wasn't the case. And that's gone, like I said, from being younger all the way until now. And so
you mean like you're saying like it wasn't the case, meaning they wanted something more than friendship?
Right.
Gotcha.
And I think where the problem is that a couple things. So it's been guys that I've been friends with that were in relationships, and I thought, we're great friends, and come to find out that wasn't their intention. They, hit on me and things like that, flirted. There's been like a small amount of where I liked them and it wasn't reciprocated, and that's okay. But I think there was some confusion because I thought that they, did like me. But the more of the issue is the other, just me kind of being blindsided. And then the last thing that has really been just bothersome is guys that I thought were friends that have tried to get me to sleep with them. And that's been the majority of it. And so with that, it's just, like I said, it kind of makes me not really want to be friends with guys first because of my past experiences.
Right.
So moving on from there, it kind of makes me worry, what's your intention? And so for the past couple of years, I've kind of, went into the mindset of dating with, I would rather know up front, don't try to be my friend first. I'd like to know up front what your intentions are. And so I've kind of worried, is that kind of, I mean, I won't say, hey, do you like me or not? Like, do you want to date me or not?
Right.
But I guess my thing is just I would rather, know up front what somebody's intentions are, because you start to feel like kind of bamboozled, I guess, if you get into a friendship for too long and then it's like, oh, wow, like I didn't know you felt that way about me. So that's kind of been my issue. So with that, I would love, it's kind of a two-part situation. I would love your kind of perspective on that part. And then there's something that I guess I felt like the Spirit kind of spoke to me a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And this is why I'm having the problem that I'm having.
Okay.
I've prayed for, who God wants for me for years. And I remember one time in particular, I felt like the Holy Spirit told me, like, it's somebody that you already know. And I was like, wait, what? Because you start like looking around like, okay, who is it?
Yeah.
But so, I've kept that in the back of my mind. I mean, I have, dated and talked to other men that weren't people that I already knew, because, you never know. You never know if that's just something that is from you and your own thoughts or, if that's God, so I didn't only hone in on guys that I knew.
Yeah.
But that's always like stuck in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And honestly, I know that sometimes God will use, kind of your I guess preference to find, who he wants for you. And so with that, like I honestly do believe it probably is somebody that I already know, because I don't really feel comfortable with a lot of men that I just meet, or that I, that I don't know. It usually is somebody that I feel comfortable with, that I've known for a long time.
Sure.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's kind of the situation. Just, am I looking at it wrong? If I do, end up being friends, because there have been guys from my past, friends from my past that have come back into my life, and I'm like, okay, God, is this what you're talking about? But then I kind of worry, like, am I putting too much pressure, like, on myself or maybe even them? And, because nothing has materialized,
Yeah.
with those past friendships. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you know, do I look at things differently? Do I, go ahead and try to be friends, but have boundaries, and kind of what kind of boundaries should those look like? And
Right.
that's kind of what I'm wanting help with.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let me kind of summarize to make sure I'm tracking with you. And so I'm going to repeat back what I heard in a summarized way. So
Okay.
basically, I'm hearing you say that you're conflicted on what's the right approach, whether it be choosing friendship with someone that could progress into dating, or just know right up front, hey, like we should just focus on a romantic opportunity or not, just wanting that clarity. On the other hand, you've also said that you make better connections with men in the past. You have made better connections in the past through friendship, and that maybe your personality style prefers that. That's kind of what you would prefer. Uh,
Yeah.
and then, so perhaps you also felt like after that, the Lord maybe personally told you that you would get married through matching with a friend first rather than taking the dating route first. Is that the general summary? And is that kind of what you're? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That sounds all pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think the main thing, and part of my, my confusion is because of the friends that I've had that were
Right.
men that, like I said, that just did not go well.
Yes.
And I don't want that kind of stuff to happen again. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that's
that's
the biggest conflict.
yes, and that's kind of what I wanted to draw attention to as I'm thinking about this, because I'll be honest with you, I'm hearing conflicting desires, to be honest. On one hand, you're saying I don't want to be friends with men. But on the other hand, you're kind of saying I would prefer to be friends with a man because that would be better for my personality type and I would like that.
Yeah,
And so there's a conflict there,
definitely.
and so the conflict is in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I think the conflict is really within you rather than with like a dating approach. So the we'll explore that statement a little bit more in a second here, but when I'm navigating a conversation like this, the best thing to do is always start with the Bible, right? Like, let's just go to the Word of God and make sure there's not something obvious there. And I think this is one of the reasons I think that God hasn't given us a super rigid blueprint on how marriages have to take place. Like, there's not a rule in the Bible that says you have to be friends first. And there's not a rule in the Bible that says you have to express your romantic interest first and not be friends. Because honestly, it really depends on the situation and the person and the context. Either one is okay so long as you do it in a biblical way. And
Right.
so I would try to first settle that in your mind. We'll talk about your heart in a second, but I think maybe settle that in your mind and just free yourself from thinking there's a right or wrong way to do this. A lot of times I think Christians end up making dating even more complicated than it already is. It's a
Yeah.
complicated thing because we end up putting rules and restrictions on ourselves that the Bible isn't even doing. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like you don't have to like make it one way or the other. You don't have to have this rule that says I only want to date somebody if they're my friend first, or I only want to date somebody if they're not my friend first. I think the better way is to see how each relationship with a man progresses and which one makes sense. Sometimes it just makes sense to skip the friendship phase and be like, I'm not really looking for a guy friend. You know, if you'd like to go on a date, or if he's pursuing you and you just ask him, like, what are your intentions? Are you just trying to be my friend, or are you interested in something more? You know, I think that's wise to do, particularly when we start getting a little bit older and we know what we want, and we don't need to go through like all these phases where we're a little bit more immature and unsure of how to gauge somebody. You know, as you mature, you start figuring out, you know, I don't need to be friends with you for 6 months. I'm an adult. I can assess, hey, I think me and you should go on a date. Hopefully a man's on the same page with you there. So I don't know. That's my first thought. I'll give you a chance to respond to that before I go on. Do you have any questions about that or thoughts?
I do have a thought.
Okay.
So like I said, I was kind of worried in the past, like, because I have actually asked like a guy that, like I said, this is somebody that I knew, you know, back in school, and we reconnected, and, you know, we started talking, and I asked him, like, you know, kind of, what are you looking for? Like, what are your intentions on, you know, communicating with me? And he had said, you know, that, you know, like, I just want to be friends. And I was like, well, okay, like, I guess we could see how that goes.
Yeah.
But that's not the way he acted.
Right.
He did act very, you know, flirty and, you know, very, you know, complimentary, in different ways. And so because of that, like I said, that I tried it, I thought that, you know, there was some confusion there. In the end, you know, it never, you know, panned out or anything, which is fine. But it made me wonder, like, was I wrong for asking that? You know, did I kind of scare him for asking that? But then, you know, like I said, it was the mixed messages that this is what I'm saying,
right,
but I'm treating you another way. And so
yes,
I guess my thing is just trying to kind of eliminate the confusion,
yes,
if possible. So
my interpretation of that specific situation is that man definitely was not looking for just a friend.
Yeah.
But he wasn't ready to say and commit to you as something more. So he was probably in that phase. Like, if I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, the best case scenario would be he's in that phase of wanting to get to know you more to see if there could be something more romantic. Or worst case scenario, or to not give him the benefit of the doubt, he was just looking to play games, get emotionally filled, not commit, knew he was never going to be something more with you, and just wanted to feel good about himself. Or, like you said in the past, just wanted to sleep with you and eventually see if you were that type of woman without committing to you in a relationship. So, you know, not to be cynical, because I definitely think that men and women can be, you know, friends, but realistically, there's, for single people, male to female friendships are not built to last.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will say, you know, nowadays, you know, with a lot of content coming out, you know, men will say, you know, like, it's not a thing. No. I know ladies think that it is, but it isn't.
It's not.
And honestly, from my experience, I totally agree with that. I totally agree that men and women can't be friends, like, long term. And honestly, my preference is to not be friends with men anymore because of that.
Right.
Because of my past experiences. And two, you know, I've heard before that sometimes whenever you have that friend that's opposite sex, it will kind of, you know, fill that role that you want your husband or wife to be in. And I'm like, I don't want that.
Exactly.
I don't want anybody to be in that role.
Yep.
So my preference is just to not be friends with men. And so I guess that's another, you know, kind of layer to this is like, well, if that's my preference, then how am I ever going to be, you know? So.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think a biblical way to view it is Genesis 1:27. So it says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And so I like to try to be careful on how I say it, because I don't think it's wrong for men and women to be friends. And I don't think someone's feelings always has to get hurt. Where I kind of try to nuance the conversation is that it never really works when they're close friends.
Yeah.
You know, when you're close friends and you're spending one-on-one time or you're talking on the phone directly a lot, that is great if you are gauging whether or not you want to be something more, but that's not realistic to think that that's a genuine friendship that's going to last your whole life. Because a lot of times, and I agree with you, I think women tend to think this is a thing more often than men. I think some men are delusioned in that way, but I think women sometimes feel like, oh, we can actually be just friends and those types of things. But the one way to look at it is, would you keep this friendship to the same level if you were married?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
you're not. You're, as soon as you get married, as soon as you get into a real relationship with a man that's not this guy friend, that guy friend relationship is going to change dramatically. And that just
Yeah.
shows you that that friendship was a placeholder, and it really wasn't. You knew, the woman knew it wasn't going to last to that level. And so that's another big conversation, but yeah, but long story short, I just don't. So here's I'll cut to the heart of the conversation with what I'm hearing from you. I think you're living out of your past. You know,
Yeah.
you're asking, I think you're projecting past wounds from what other men did to you onto new men that have nothing to do with that. Like,
Yeah.
there could be men who come your way and, you know, choose to be friends with you at first to see whether or not they want to be something more, and that wouldn't be wrong. But either way, whether they do what you would prefer nowadays, which would be to be more intentional and just go to the dating phase, or if they don't and they try the friend option to, you know, kind of see if it would work that way, I think you should just do your best to work on what happened in the past and leave those problems with those men. Because
Yeah.
otherwise you're always going to be reacting and trying to like respond to these things that aren't happening right now. You're continually responding to what happened in the past. So a lot of times, like, people will create a list of requirements or a list of desires, right? Your list. What do you want in a man? Or if a man, what do you want in a woman? And of course, as Christians, we know we want biblical qualities, but then they start adding other things. And this is a good example of that. I would like a guy who doesn't want to be friends and is just pursuing me outright. Okay. So that's a requirement that you may put on your list. However, that's not a biblical demand. It's an okay desire, but really what that is, it's a projection of your past hurts. And so you start making a list of past hurts, basically, of you're trying to find this person who isn't going to hurt you like other people in the past hurt you. And it starts putting up a lot of extra barriers that make it difficult to get to know people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And it's funny because like I've done a lot of healing from past relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that is
Yeah.
like the past hurt. But yes, you are spot on it. And I hadn't even realized that until you said that, until you verbalized that, because it has been a lot of hurt from guy friends. And I was just like, whenever you said that, I was like, you know what? He is exactly right.
Yeah.
And because, you know, a lot of times we try to protect ourselves from past hurt. And so what do? We shut ourselves off.
I don't want that to happen again, so I better not be friends again with a man. And rather than, you know, of course we don't want that happen again, but rather than, you know, cut off friendship with men who may, you know, be something more in the future, you would want to more so look at the quality and character issues that that man had who did that to you and say, okay, now I can pick up on that better. This guy kept wanting to be alone with me, and then he wanted to sleep with me. Okay, that, like, what's up with that? Now you can start picking up on trends from men who may try to do that in the past. But, you know, rather than just projecting that hurt on the whole friendship idea, you want to more attach that issue to a more specific character defect.
Yeah. You make a great point because, you know, like me reflecting, I'm like, you know what, were any of these men Christians? Some were.
Yeah.
but some weren't.
Right.
And even if they were, does that mean that they are, living how God wanted them to,
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So then going forward, like I said, one aspect of my question was, like, do I create boundaries? And obviously I know I need to, but like, what would those boundaries in friendship look like?
Yeah.
I mean, there's obvious ones, like where, like you're not talking, inappropriately,
Yeah.
To a male friend, but kind of looking for some advice about what those boundaries would look like.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think that what you always want to do, big picture, a good general principle, is you always want your commitment level and your intimacy level to be matching. So when you sense that the friendship is asking something of you that a friendship shouldn't be asking of you, that's when you know there's a boundary problem. So, men and women can have healthy relationships so long as they're asking the right level from each other. So if a man wants to spend alone time with you and call you every day and text you every day, that's not friendship. You need to, that needs to be a boyfriend, right? And then if a man wants to sleep with you, that's not boyfriend, that's husband. Right?
Yeah.
So
that's not even friend anymore.
Exactly. So those are examples of your commitment needs to be matching your intimacy, and a mature man's gonna naturally know that, and you'll be able to sense that. And you guys, if you are truly friends, it will be a friendship, and it won't be pretend friendship that's actually dating without the title and commitment of dating. And so you just have to pay attention to the reality of how this person's treating you and versus what they're committing towards you. So it's okay if a man wants to be friends with you so long as he's treating you like a friend. If a guy at church, for example, is nice to you, comes up and talks to you, invites you to things, that's cool. There's no problem with that. But then he starts texting you one-on-one, wants to go to coffee, wants to hang out. Let that slide for a little bit. But eventually he needs to be like, hey, I'm obviously doing this because I'm interested in you,
Right.
So there's not a definite line I can give you, but more so you'll know it when you see it, and just pay attention to when you feel like this is more than a friendship. That's the problem. And, last thing I'll say is I think just putting yourself in environments where you would get what you would hope to have. In other words, if you want to just skip the friendship thing, which I get, I think that's wise in a lot of cases. I don't think that's wrong at all. I just think you should do something where that makes sense, like online dating. Like,
yeah.
If people aren't looking for friends with online dating, everyone there is saying, I'm looking for a relationship, right? And that way you're on the same page right off the bat. So, I would encourage you just to be more intentional about what you want and try to create environments in your life where that's more likely to happen than, just casually talking to guys and you're kind of giving off the friendship vibe. You want to just create that environment where a man might just know right up front, oh, this is romantic, not friendship.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I will say I'm not so much on an online dating kind of person. That's just not my thing. It's just a little awkward.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why my preference is, somebody that I know,
right.
In my personal life or, meet organically.
Right. Well, that's where I want to challenge you, though. That's where I want to challenge you, Natalie, because, if you want, you got to go with what you want. And sometimes what you want requires sacrifice. So if you don't like the friendship thing, you're going to have to sacrifice one of the benefits of the friendship thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you just have to decide what you really care about more. You might have to push through and get through that awkwardness, and then you won't have to deal with the confusion of, are we friends? Are we something more? Or if the awkwardness and the confusion is just too much, you might have to just say, well, I guess I'm just going to have to deal with these confusing friendship phase at first. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you can't have it both ways. You got to choose which one is more important to you.
Yeah, that's very true.